Hey everyone, Pickled Dill here. Before we get into today's story, you're probably wondering why it's titled Part 8A. Simply put, it's because as I was writing the script, I realized there was simply too much content to fit into one video. So instead of trying to cram everything in, or skim over the important stuff, I've decided to split this part. But don't worry, Part 8B will be the next thing releasing on the channel, so you shouldn't have long to wait. And in the meantime, sit back, relax, and let's get into the long-awaited battle tray arc. It is well and truly nighttime when the SS Aqua pulls into port, and the shadow of the battle tray looms over everyone as they descend the gangplank. Waiting for them are a group of 4 people, ranging from young to considerably older, made up of a portly man with a mustache and yellow hairy jacket, a beautiful woman adorned from head to toe with precious stones, a grizzled-looking old man in a creased police uniform, and a short young woman with a purple bonnet and rosy cheeks. However, in spite of these differences, when their guests from the various regions approach, they all greet them in unison with cheers of Alola. Red and Blue, who have been here before, return the gesture, and so taking their cues from the Cantonian champs, the rest of the group do likewise. Red then steps forth, smiling broadly as he formally thanks the Alolan delegation for allowing them to use their region as the site for their tournament. However, before he can finish his clearly practiced speech, the big mustached man steps forth as well, and wraps the Cantonian in a tight bear hug. In this moment, the spell of formality is broken, and everyone at last feels comfortable to mingle, with Blue taking the first step by laying a kiss on the hand of the bejeweled woman. Ash in particular wants to get to know the Alolan challengers, and so with Gary, AJ, Joe, and Astra goes in search of them, but to their surprise, they only find the 4 people who greeted them, and surely they are all too old to be competing for the title of strongest young trainer. Ash being, well, Ash, expresses this thought to the rosy-cheeked young woman, and for his trouble receives a punch to the top of the head from the Alolan, as Joe, Gary, and Astrid all sigh that this trip may have taught Ash a lot, but evidently not when it comes to manners. The bonnet-clad woman then introduces herself as Hapu, kahuna of this island, declaring that she's not competing only because if a kahuna battled, it'd be a foregone conclusion who'd win. Joe, as the only one who has heard of the kahuna, breathes that she's probably right, causing his friends to ask what a kahuna is and why they're so strong. Still giving Hapu an impressed look, Joe explains the kahuna are like the Elite Four of the Alola region, being the strongest trainer from each of their respective islands. Ash, who has recovered from his noggin flogging, calls this awesome while AJ asks what exactly Joe means that they're like the Elite Four. Here Hapu takes over, explaining that Alola currently does not have a Pokemon League, meaning it doesn't possess a champion or Elite Four. That is part of why Alola was chosen as the location for the tournament, since that way none of the teams would have a home field advantage, and the kahunas could act as referees without fear of bias. Gary nods that this makes a lot of sense, and it sounds like something Blue would come up with. Hapu confirms that it was his cousin's idea, while behind her, a voice coyly jokes that she's gonna make him blush. Looking round, they all see Blue, who has made his way over to them, with a smile on his face. Ever the blunt one, Hapu asks what the Cantonian wants, and still smiling, Blue responds that since she's the kahuna of this island, he thought she'd be the person to ask if the other team has shown up yet. Looking confused, AJ asks what other team, saying he thought they'd gathered everyone, but with a chuckle, Blue shakes his head, saying for the bracket to even out, there has to be one more team. He then looks back to Hapu, who gruffly answers that La Primera and her team arrived yesterday, and are currently training in Pony Gauntlet, if he and his students want to go and fetch them. Teasingly, Blue asks if this is because he kissed Olivia's hand and not hers, but Hapu just grunts him to go be ridiculous somewhere else. Chuckling that they heard the lady, Blue tells Gary and Joe to come with him, and as the 2 boys fall in step with their mentor, Ash asks if he can come along too. Blue smiles that he doesn't see why not, and so it is a group of 4 who head towards the eastern path from the battle tray. Even though it is night, the temperature is still balmy, making the stroll through the gauntlet a pleasant one for Ash and his friends. All around them, nocturnal Pokemon go about their business, with Ash even spotting something that looks kinda like a Pikachu, but with a triangular body and a larger than average head. Excitedly, Joe calls this a Mimikyu, declaring his intent to catch it, and since this is the most fired up Ash has ever seen the Pokemon tech drop out, he cheers him on. Blue and Gary also seem pleased with this passion, with Gary volunteering to hang back with Joe so that Blue isn't late for the others. The older oak thanks his little cousin for this, then continues on with Ash following after him. After about half an hour more of walking, the smell of food alerts them to the presence of people, and so following their noses, Ash and Blue quickly come across a group of 5 people gathered around a campfire. As with the other teams, this is made up of 4 young people and an adult mentor, and when she sees them approach, the champion mentor, who Ash assumes is La Primera, welcomes the Cantonians to join them. Letting out an abrasive huff, the only boy of the group, a young man with mottled brown hair, exclaims that they can join them, but he hasn't prepared enough food for 7, and he's not giving up my boss stiff sandwich, so don't even ask. Chuckling, another of the team, a girl with black hair save for a green streak at the front, says that if Ash or Blue want, she'll battle them for her sandwich. Grumbling, the brown-haired boy protests that he doesn't know what's more frustrating, her incessant desire to battle anything that moves, or the fact that she'd be willing to gamble away something he worked so hard to make. Giggling softly behind her hand, the third member of the group, a girl with blue and red hair and a well-loved Eevee backpack, warns the boy, who she calls Arvin, that those sound like fighting words, so he should watch out that Nemona doesn't try to battle him now. Perking up, the girl with the green streak, who must be Nemona, beams that she'd be happy to battle any member of her team, but with a pacifying smile, the coach encourages her to cool her jets, since soon she will have a chance to battle strong trainers from around the world. Seeing this as a solid segue, Blue cuts in here, saying that this is why he and Ash have come all the way to get them, since it's time for the opening ceremony of the tournament. At the word tournament, Nemona starts to buzz, almost literally, while the others share looks ranging from eagerness all the way down to trepidation. But nonetheless, at their mentor's instruction, they begin packing up camp before joining Blue and Ash in preparation for the walk back. Wanting to get to know these 4 young challengers better, Ash falls back to walk alongside them, introducing himself in Pikachu, who looks longingly at the sandwich in Arvin's hand. With a sigh, Arvin breaks off a little bit for the electric rodent, though when Ash asks for a bit as well, he is instead met with a baleful stare. In a small voice, the blue-haired girl tells Ash not to mind Arvin, he's just cranky since dinner got interrupted, before introducing herself as Penny. Hearing her speak again, Ash is sure now that her accent is distinctly different from the rest of her team, sounding closer to the members of Team Gala, and so with interest asks exactly where she's from. Looking embarrassed, Penny blurts that she's from Gala and knows it's probably not fair for her to be on Team Paldea since she wasn't born there, but when Miss Gita invited her she just couldn't say no. Laughing nervously and rubbing the back of his head, Ash apologizes, saying he didn't mean to upset her, he just thought her accent was cool. Also, she shouldn't worry about not being from what she call it, Paldea? Since his team is someone from Unova, so it's totally fine. Looking relieved by this, Penny confirms that yes, her team is from the Paldea region, a claim which interests Ash since he's never heard of it. More than a little shocked, Nemona takes over the conversation here, telling Ash all about her home in excruciating detail, especially when it comes to battling. This quickly overwhelms the poor boy, and with their coach preoccupied talking to Blue, the final member of Team Paldea, a young woman with long green hair dressed in sensible business attire, steps up to rein Nemona in. Shaking his head as if trying to dislodge some of the plethora of new information Nemona has just crammed into his brain, Ash thanks the girl, and with a smile, she tells him it was no problem, introducing herself at last as Rika. Mercifully, Ash's conversation with Rika is much less intense, though he does still manage to learn plenty about the Paldean delegates, such as the fact that Arvin is the son of Paldea's 2 professors, that Rika herself is in training to one day take over as a member of Paldea's Elite 4, and that La Primera's name is actually Gita, and that Nemona is her personal student in the same way that he is Red's. Around this time, the group run back into Gary and Joe, and seeing the proud look on the latter's face, Ash is able to assume that he managed to catch his new Pokemon. Joe nods happily at this, while Gary praises that it was quite a battle, much to the shy boy's embarrassment. Having a feeling he and Penny might get along just fine, Rika then steps in, making the necessary introductions, while Gary, having heard the tail end of Arvin's tale, decides to chat with him. Soon the group of 9 arrive back at the battle tree, with Blue, Gary, Gita, and Nemona splitting off to go talk with the man who hugged Red, who Ash learns is named Hala, about some opening ceremony for the tournament. Having no part to play in this due to Gary being team captain, Ash decides to seek out his own mentor, and finds him on the edge of the gathering, speaking with Lance. It seems that it is not a happy conversation, as moments later the Dragon Master swans away, cape flapping behind him, while Red lets out a sigh, then looks up at the battle tree itself. himself, a ponderous look in his eyes. Making his way over, Ash asks what that argument with Lance was all about, but with a wistful, somewhat melancholic sigh, Red replies that it was ancient history, before changing the subject and asking if Ash is excited for the tournament to start. Grinning, Ash replies that he is, and this pleases Red, who lays a hand on his protege's shoulder, and in a small voice meant only for him, admits that he truly believes Ash has what it takes to win it all. Neither say anything for a time after this, and their silence is only broken when AJ runs over to them, telling them to come watch, since Hull is calling for everyone's attention. Following him back, they see the old man standing on a raised platform and in the middle of a speech, seemingly welcoming them all officially to the Battletree tournament. With a wide smile, he announces that over the next few days, each of them will be tested to see if they have what it takes to call themselves the strongest young trainer in the world, and a future Pokemon master. Though, before they can begin, they must first pay homage to the Tapus, the great island guardians who protect Alola. For this reason, he calls for each of the team captains to come forth and lay down a piece of wood from their home region so they may build a bonfire. This is meant not only as tribute, but also to symbolize this great event, a burning passion made stronger by all the people here coming together and touching each other's lives. He then stands aside, allowing the captains to take the stage so they may add their offering to the fire. First comes Gary, followed by Nimona, Alan, Jasmine, Tyson, Buck, Hop, and then finally Benga. When each piece of kindling is laid together to form the fire, Hull lights it, and at once the flames rise high, briefly creating the mirage of some great beast. To Ash it looks like the legendary Ho-Oh, and in that moment, he believes as his mentor does, that he will be victorious tomorrow. He is not alone here, however, as the beautiful flames give heart to every young trainer, and as one, they all make a silent vow to prove themselves in the tournament. Finally, Hulla calls for their attention once more, declaring that with the tournament now officially open, it's time to draw lots and explain the rules. Due to there being 32 participants, each trainer will be sorted into one of 4 brackets, through which they will fight their way to the top. The 4 winners of the brackets will then face off in single elimination matches to determine the ultimate victor. Down below, the 32 contestants nod their understanding, and so Hulla directs them to a large concealed box where they can pull lots. As they all line up, the kahuna continues, showing off a set of red, blue, yellow, and green stones, each marked with a number from 1 to 8, and explaining that the color denotes which bracket the trainer is in, while the number denotes match order, with challenges 1 and 2 facing off first, followed by 3 and 4, and so on and so forth. This makes sense to Ash, and so when he reaches the front of the line, he puts his hand in the box and pulls out a green stone with the number 8, indicating that he will be the last match of the 4th bracket. Wondering what his friends pulled, Ash goes to seek them out, coming first across AJ, who tells him that he scored Red 1, which must be a sign that he's gonna win, since after all Master Red is number 1. Laughing, Ash tells him that he doesn't believe in that sort of mumbo-jumbo. He believes in power, and that's what he and his team have. Smirking, AJ retorts that Ash's power is nothing to him and his Pokemon, and when Ash grits his teeth asking if that's so, AJ replies that it is, showing off his bicep as if to prove his point. Ash reacts in kind, showing off his own bicep, and when AJ calls it puny, the pair of boys quickly descend into petty bickering, showing that despite their friendship, their rivalry is still alive and well. Before long they are joined by Gary, who finds the duo pressed nose to nose glaring daggers at each other, and with a laugh tells them not to wear themselves out, that is unless one of them is Blue 7, in which case they should feel free, since they'll be his opponent. Breaking apart, Ash and AJ both show off their placement, with Gary commenting this is great, he can crush one of them in the semis and the other in the finals. All enmity forgotten, Ash and AJ tell the young oak to dream on, since it'll be the two of them in the finals, battling it out to prove who is Red's best apprentice. Some of that old cockiness shining through, Gary shrugs that they'll see, before telling them that he'll smell them later, having spotted Joe hanging with Alistair and Penny, and so heads over to ask about their placements. Ash and AJ follow suit, splitting up to ascertain who their first round opponents will be. For AJ, he finds that he will be facing Tyson, the captain of Team Hoenn, first up, while Ash's match will be none other than Nimona, who is delighted to know that the first friend she made in the tournament will also be her first opponent. Grinning, Ash adds that he'll also be her last, to which the Paldean girl tells him to bring it on, as they fist bump, excited for what the morning will bring. The next morning, Ash along with all the delegates arrive at the base of the giant tree, ready to begin the tournament. Up above them, their mentors watch on the back of their various flying Pokemon, while standing in front of 4 colored gates of the Kahunas. Heading over to the green gate, Ash sees that he is not the only member of Team Kanto here, with Joe having also seemingly drawn a green stone. When he sees Ash, the former Pokemon Tech student gulps, saying he guesses his battle tree run ends here in green bracket if Ash is here, but with a sigh that they really need to work on his confidence, Ash replies that maybe not. After all, he did beat him last time they battled. Joe seems unconvinced, but is too introverted to fight it, and so instead goes to stand with Alistair and Penny again. Deciding to leave this little group be, Ash looks around for his other rivals. Unsurprisingly, Nimona is there, with the girl giving him a friendly but determined smile when their eyes meet, along with Virgil, Sawyer, and Paul. Ash scowls when he sees the purple-haired Sinnoh boy, and as Paul catches sight of him, he mirrors the gesture, neither having forgotten their encounter at Lake Verity. Ash is tempted to give this particular rival a piece of his mind, but before he gets the chance, the last Kahuna he hasn't met yet calls for silence, leading his 8 charges up onto one of the walkway-sized routes of the battle tree, where a battlefield has been laid out. In a bored voice that suggests that he'd rather be anywhere than here, he introduces himself as Nanu, the referee for the first round of Green Bracket, saying the way this bracket works is simple. Round 1 will exclusively be 1v1s, with round 2 being 2v2s, and 3 being 3v3s. After that it's the semis or whatever, but by then he'll have found someone to cover for him, so it's not his problem. In the meantime, Green 1 and Green 2 are to take the field, since the sooner they get these battles over with, the better. As for the rest of them, they can stay to watch or go check out one of the other battles. He doesn't care so long as they're here when the number is called. He then stands aside, allowing Sawyer and Alistair to take the field, while Ash, remembering that AJ said he was first in his bracket, decides to go cheer him on. With a smile, Ash asks if Joe wants to come with him, but the other Cantonian shakes his head, saying he's up next, so he doesn't want to run the risk of missing his chance, so he'll just stay here and cheer for Alistair. Nodding his understanding, the son of Pallet and his electric partner depart, running around the gargantuan tree at top speed, and thankfully arriving at the red gate just as Kahuna Olivia is finishing her much more friendly version of Nanu's speech. Spotting Ash, AJ gives a thumbs up as he and Tyson clamber onto the giant root battlefield, and on Olivia's call, bring out their Pokemon. In unison, the pair throw their Pokeballs, with AJ choosing Barbaracle, while Tyson chooses Sceptile. Despite not knowing this Pokemon, Ash can tell that it's a grass type, and a powerful one at that, which is bad news for AJ and his quad-weak rock-water type. However, in spite of this, AJ and Barbaracle seem undeterred, and when the pair's eyes meet, matching confident grins cross their faces. AJ then tells his Rocky Rage monster to use Shell Smash, a command that is all too happy to obey, as it smashes its 4 fists into its chest, shedding the heavy rock armor that encases its torso. For his part, Tyson is a more measured and cautious trainer as Sceptile hang back, asking AJ if he's sure he really wants to take away his Pokemon's defenses, considering the type matchup. However, AJ just grins that he knows what he's doing, and if Tyson is so sure he's making a mistake, he should capitalize and have Sceptile make use of that type advantage to attack. A rueful smile on his face, Tyson sighs that he did try to warn him before having his grass-type rush in with Leaf Blade. Almost all of Barbaracle's rock armor is gone, and so when this hits, it is for massive damage. But even so, Barbaracle stands strong, its confident grin unwavering as AJ tells it to show their opponent the power of their training. As the last of the rock armor crumbles to dust, Barbaracle barks its understanding, leaping forward and slashing at Sceptile with one of its lower arms using Razor Shell. This strikes Sceptile in the exact same way Leaf Blade did to it, and it is clear for all to see that this is a case of, you showed me yours, now let me show you mine. However, there is one key difference in these exchanges, that being the outcome. Despite its resistance to the water move, Barbaracle's overwhelming power makes all the difference, and so letting out a quiet gasp, Sceptile falls forward, taken out by a single attack. Throughout the crowd of onlookers, both mentors and competitors begin to murmur at this upset. AJ pays them no mind, however, running up to Barbaracle as the pair fist bump to celebrate their first victory as true partners. Charmander, still at AJ's side, also roars its congratulations, and as the boy lifts it onto his shoulder, Barbaracle gives it a nod that says, "I may have started us off, but now you must carry the torch." Looking up, Ash spots Red on Arrow, and as the pair's eyes meet, both smile. There is one person not smiling though, and as Ash feels a rough hand shove him aside, he turns to see Benga marching over to AJ. Scowl growing on his own face, AJ asks his cousin what he wants, and with a sneer, the other grandson of Alder declares to finally put him in his place. He then thrusts out his hand, showing a red stone with the number 7 on it, and issuing a clear challenge to meet him in the final round of the preliminaries, so they may settle their feud, and determine who is more deserving to be the victor of their bracket, amongst other things. Following this tense exchange, AJ, Tyson, and Benga all vacate the field so the second round can begin. As Olivia calls for Harrison and Whitney to bring out their Pokemon, Ash remembers that Joe is second in his bracket, and so rushes back to cheer him on. However, as he rounds the bend leading to the green gate, he sees that he is already too late, with Joe on his hands and knees, while Paul stands over him, glowering at the Cantonian as pathetic. Angrily, Ash barks at Paul to leave his friend alone, but with an amused sniff, the purple-haired youth replies that he should have known they'd be friends, Delibird of a feather and all. He then turns his back on the Kanto duo, recalling his Turtwig, and as he does, Joe's badly beaten Sobble falls from its mouth, landing on the battlefield with a wet thud. Meekly, Joe crawls over to Sobble, cradling it in his arms and crying that he's sorry he's such a bad trainer, while at his side, Ash asks what happened. A familiar voice then pipes up, that of Gary, as he steps from the crowd of watchers to tell his rival that Paul's battle style was brutal and utterly devoid of remorse, so if he's going to be facing him down the line, he should be careful. Anger only growing, Ash grits his teeth, and in a furious hiss replies that it's Paul who'll have to be careful, since mark his words, he's coming for him. He and Gary then help Joe and Sobble off the field, as Penny and Virgil prepare for their battle. To the surprise of everyone, both choose Eevee, with the 2 fox Pokemon even looking shocked as they stare down their doppelganger. Finally, when Nanu shrugs that they can begin or whatever, Virgil, as the more outgoing of the combatants, seizes the first move, telling his Eevee to use Quick Attack. Suddenly, the little fox bursts into action, leaping at its opponent, but for all her shyness, Penny is no slouch, telling her Eevee to use Baby Doll Eyes to mitigate some of the damage. At once, Penny's Eevee flashes a cute look, though Ash is unsure how much good this actually does, as Virgil's Eevee still hits, sending Penny's Eevee flailing onto its side. Deep concern in her voice, Penny asks if it's alright, and with a yip to say that it is, her Eevee rises to its feet, looking more determined than ever. Both trainers then call their next attack, that being Tackle, and just as symmetrically, the 2 evolution Pokemon charge forward, slamming their skulls into each other. In this it seems that they are evenly matched, and so with no definitive winner, they repeat the process over and over, headbutting each other with ever-increasing vigor. When even this yields no result, Penny and Virgil change tack, with Virgil instructing his Eevee to use Double Kick, while Penny has her partner use Bite. This culminates in Virgil's Eevee getting one foot stuck in Penny's Eevee's mouth, as it manages to get the first of its super effective kicks off, but not the second, as the Galarian girl's fox latches onto its opponent's ankle like a bear trap. This puts the pair in something of a deadlock, but with neither trainer willing to give in, both work to break the stalemate in their favor. Penny does this by calling for her Eevee to throw Virgil's, but Virgil uses this as just the chance he needs to have Eevee use the second kick of its previously called Double Kick, since his fox no longer has to worry about balance. And in this it seems Virgil is mostly correct, as when his Eevee's back paw collides with the face of Penny's, it does manage to knock it down and break free of its hold. However, this is at the cost of being sent flying and crashing hard into the wooden battlefield several feet away. Neither Eevee looks especially good now, with both lying prone on the battlefield, while behind them, their trainers call for one last attack. Heeding the cries of their friends, the pair of loyal fox dogs rise, and as they do, an incandescent light bursts from both of them, blinding the onlookers for a moment. When it subsides, neither trainer is in possession of an Eevee any longer, with Virgil's Eevee having evolved into Espeon, while Penny's has become a Sylveon. Both Penny and Virgil are beside themselves at this sight. While renewed by their new power-up, the two evolutions ready themselves for round 2. Both being Eevee specialists, Penny and Virgil tell their Pokemon to use the move they gained through evolution, causing Espeon's eyes to glow blue as it manifests confusion, while Sylveon lets out a mighty cry with its disarming voice. In the center of the field, the pink fairy aura of this attack quickly clashes with the faint blue sonic wall of confusion, and as the power of both continually rises in an attempt to overwhelm the other, it is clear that this will be the final attack of the match. Unfortunately for Sylveon, it simply does not have the same raw power as Espeon when it comes to these sort of attacks, and so with one last cry, the Sun Pokemon's confusion breaks through, sending the full force of its psychic energy washing over Sylveon. Alas, the intertwining Pokemon cannot withstand such an assault, and with one last piteous cry of its own, is sent flying off the battlefield, and even the battle tree itself, laying in a heap several feet away, unable to battle. Hanging her head, Penny wanders over to pick up her Pokemon, thanking it for its efforts, while Virgil in turn praises both her and her partner's hard work, promising to use what he has learned from this battle, not just to further himself in the tournament, but also to help any fairy types he may meet during the course of his work as a rescue ranger. This pleases Penny, who placidly wishes him good luck, before both she and Virgil return to the crowd, meaning that at last it is Ash's time to battle. As he and Nemona make their way onto the field, Gary and Joe tell Ash to win this, before departing so that Gary isn't late to his own first battle against Trip. Meanwhile, Nemona beams that she's been waiting for this all morning, and she hopes that Ash is as hyped as her to battle. Making a determined fist, Ash grins that he sure is, asking Pikachu if he'll do the honors of fighting first for him today. Sparks flashing from his cheeks, the electric rodent gives a resolute nod, then leaps from his trainer's shoulder, as Nemona chuckles that if that's Ash's choice, it's only fair she meet him head-on with her Pawmot. The Pokemon Nemona brings forth looks a lot to Ash like a fluffy Raichu, only bigger, and as he eyes it with excitement, Nemona beams that she knew he'd like it, explaining that like Pikachu, it's an electric type, except it also has the fighting type to boot. Ash calls this awesome, and it takes both trainers exerting the full force of their will to hold off, until Nanu says they can begin. Finally, the grizzled Kahuna gives the go-ahead, and the two hotheads each make a grab for the first move, with Pikachu using Quick Attack, while Pawmot is told to use Ice Punch. Being slightly faster, Pikachu hits first, managing to slam its head into Pawmot's stomach, but this comes at a cost, as thanks to being so close, the yellow electric type can do nothing to stop the frozen fist from striking his back. This quickly creates a second problem, as when Pikachu attempts to dart back to his side of the field, he finds his back legs to be stiff and sluggish, allowing Pawmot to deliver a roundhouse kick to his cheeks. Landing hard, Ash at last sees the patch of ice planted on Pikachu's lower back, and realizes this must be what's slowing his buddy down. Worry in his tone, he tells Pikachu to get rid of it, but despite his best efforts, the little electric type simply cannot. Unluckily for them, Nemona does not stay still during this time, telling Pawmot to use Dig, and knowing just how bad this will be for them, Ash has Pikachu jump out of the way. Unfortunately, this too is hampered by Pikachu's short legs, meaning the smaller electric type can only partially avoid the super effective attack, halving the damage, but still being sent flying. Seeing that close-range combat is not their friend, Ash changes tack, having Pikachu fire off a Thunderbolt, but as this strikes Pawmot, the orange electric type looks refreshed. Smiling, Nemona calls this Pawmot's awesome ability, which allows it to absorb electric attacks and use them to charge its own internal battery. This is perhaps the worst possible news Ash could have received, as with Pikachu's movement impeded and his electric attacks ineffective, it seems they are out of options. After coming so far and making so many new friends, is he really about to lose here in the first round? Then above him, Ash hears Red's voice, and as he lifts his head, he sees his mentor cheering for him, urging him not to give up, and telling him to clear his head and think about the situation from all angles. This is easier said than done, especially with Nemona having Pawmot bear down on Pikachu with a volley of ice punches, in the hope of turning him into an ice sculpture. Needing time to think, Ash puts his trust in Pikachu, telling him to do what he has to stay in this fight while he comes up with a plan, and having just as much faith in Ash to watch his back, Pikachu nods before running as fast as he can away from Pawmot. With his reduced speed, Pikachu is now slower than Pawmot, meaning the bigger electric rodent is able to corner him repeatedly, forcing Pikachu to use Thunderbolt as a distraction long enough to get away, even if it's only delaying the seemingly inevitable. Unfortunately, Pawmot only needs one lucky hit to achieve its goal, and as the smaller electric rodent's chilled legs begin to cramp and stiffen, it finally gets it, landing an Ice Punch which freezes Pikachu's entire lower half, with the ice slowly creeping upwards. Desperately, Pikachu uses Thunderbolt on itself, willingly incurring the minor damage in order to shatter the ice chrysalis, and as Ash watches this, an idea finally strikes him. Grin crossing his face once more, Ash then calls to the newly freed Pikachu to use Thunderbolt on Pawmot again. Bewilderment on her face, Nemona asks Ash if he's lost it, reminding him of Pawmot's Volt Absorb, but Ash replies that he hasn't forgotten that. In fact, it's going to be the key to his and Pikachu's victory. He then tells his partner to do it, and with a cry of its own name, Pikachu channels all the electricity it has into Pawmot, who once more takes the hit, smiling slightly at the pleasant feeling. Still not getting it, Nemona asks Ash how this is helping him, but Ash just tells her to watch Pawmot, whose face has shifted from happy to neutral, and now at last to slightly uncomfortable. This sight shocks the Paldean girl, and it is only when she gasps that Ash explains, telling her that it's like she said, Pawmot charges its internal battery from electric attacks, but what happens when a battery gets overcharged? It explodes. Shock still on her face, Nemona breathes that even so, it's not like Pikachu could produce enough juice to overcharge Pawmot, is it? But once again, Ash claims that it is her doing that will allow this, since by partially freezing Pikachu, she managed to cool him down so his internal battery can go for longer without overheating, like a heatsink. Meanwhile, Pawmot must be pretty hot after running after his electric type with all that extra mass and fur, meaning that by his best guess, it'll be ready to go boom any second now. As if on cue, Pawmot, whose face is now contorted into pain, lets out a cry, and as it does, electricity shoots from every orifice, before an explosion rocks the battle tree. Briefly, black smoke blankets the battlefield, but as this clears, everyone sees a very frazzled Pawmot lying on its back, its fur standing on end thanks to all the static electricity it's conducted, and its eyes in the shape of spirals, signifying that this match is over. Meanwhile, all around the battle tree, the final matches of the first round are coming to a close, with Benga having secured his spot over Hop, Gary defeating Trip to move on to round 2, and Alan winning against Elite Four member in training Rika to round out the bunch. With that, the remaining 16 contenders are all told by their respective kahunas to head further up the tree to the next battlefield, while those who have lost are invited to either stay and watch with their mentors, or make use of this time on the island to continue their training. The remaining 4 trainers of Green Bracket then begin their trek up the winding route bridge, with Virgil laughingly telling Ash that it's lucky neither of them are afraid of heights. Ash laughs in turn that he's right, before realizing that since both of their matches were in the back half of round 1, they'll be facing off now. Seeing concern on the black-haired boy's face, Virgil asks Ash what's wrong, and with a sigh, Ash admits that after everything with Bouffalante, he considers Virgil a friend, and he isn't sure how to feel about the fact that one of them is about to be eliminated. Laughter back in his voice, Virgil grins that if that's all, he shouldn't be worried, since so long as they both battle their hardest, he won't be upset no matter the outcome. Looking up at the honey-haired young man, Ash asks if he's sure, and with a clap on the shoulder, Virgil promises that he is, urging Ash to get his head in the game, since after Paul and Sawyer finish their battle, it'll be the two of them, and he wants Ash at his best. As they make their way further up the gargantuan tree, the route walkways become giant vines, and slowly they intersect, with Ash catching sight of his friends and rivals along the way. From this he learns that the remaining matches are AJ vs Whitney and Benga vs Buck in red bracket, Marnie vs Astrid and Gary vs Arvin in blue bracket, and Iris vs Karina and Alan vs Annabelle in yellow bracket. This means that currently no team has been completely eliminated, though teams Johto, Galar and Paldea only have one participant moving on to round 2. Finally, after what feels like forever, Ash, Virgil, Paul and Sawyer reach the second battlefield, though now instead of Nanu's dour visage, it is Hala who greets them, energetically ordering them to show off their best, since he's ready to referee. This seems to inspire Sawyer, who promises to give him a great match, before smiling at Paul and saying that after analysing his battle in round 1, he feels he has everything he needs to win. Paul's response is a steely silence as he pulls out his first Pokeball, but before he can throw it, Hala stops the Sinnoh native, chuckling that old Nanu probably neglected to mention that this round is a double battle, so he'll need 2 Pokemon to proceed. Paul gives a brusque nod of understanding, then pulls a second ball from his belt, as Sawyer draws 2 of his own. Then, on Hala's command, both bring forth their Pokemon, Trico and Bagon for Sawyer, and Ninjask and Snorunt for Paul. Moments later they are told to begin, and ever-decisive Paul is quick to seize the first move, having Snorunt use Ice Beam while Ninjask uses Fury Cutter. However, for all his meek disposition, Sawyer is no weakling when it comes to battling, and so he has his Pokemon dodge, before telling them to close in for a joint attack on Snorunt as the biggest threat. This is tactically sound, if not for one issue: Ninjask. With its incredible speed, the bug flying type is able to make a second pass at Trico, slamming it in the back with a repeat Fury Cutter and knocking it off its feet. Being an empathetic Pokemon, Bagon slows to check on its partner, and this moment of vulnerability is just the sort of thing Paul is waiting for, telling Snorunt to blast both of Sawyer's Pokemon with Ice Beam. Twin blue beams then shoot from the Snowhead Pokemon's mouth, freezing both Trico and Bagon solid, and for a moment, Ash has to wonder if this is Paul's way of adapting Nemona's strategy. However, he is not given long to wonder, as moments later Ninjask shatters the ice with a follow-up Fury Cutter that deals super effective damage to the already wounded Trico. As the gecko hits the ground hard, Paul tells Ninjask to use that move for a third time and end things. But it seems that Sawyer has other ideas, as he tells Bagon to intercept the blow with Fire Fang. At once the little dragon's maw glows orange with flames, and without hesitation it lunges at Ninjask. However, during all this, it seems that everyone has forgotten about Snorunt, allowing it to fire off an ice shard which manages to hit before all the other moves, striking Bagon in the eye and throwing off its trajectory so that its lunge goes wide, and Ninjask is able to hit Trico unimpeded. This is too much for the grass type, and as it goes down, so do Sawyer's chances of victory. To his credit, the Hoenn boy fights on valiantly to the bitter end, but when faced with a 2v1 where type is not on his side, it is only a matter of time before he falls, sending Paul to the bracket finals. As he and Sawyer clear the field, Ash and Virgil take their places, with Virgil asking Ash if he's ready. Ash grins that the Unova doesn't have to worry about him, since he's decided to give 110%, and this puts a smile on Virgil's face, as he declares that he intends to do likewise. He then grins that he'd like to reintroduce Ash to a familiar pair, bringing out his Flareon and Vaporeon, while Ash decides to use a duo Virgil knows as well, Froakie and Bouffalant. On Hala's command, the battle begins, with Ash having Bouffalant use Head Charge on Vaporeon, while Froakie uses Water Pulse on Flareon. It is a sound strategy, but not a foolproof one, as Virgil has Vaporeon use its superior speed to dodge, before taking the Water Pulse in its partner's stead thanks to Water Absorb. He then apologizes that Ash must be getting pretty sick of type-negating abilities after his battle with Nemona, but Ash replies that on the contrary, he's already beaten 1 Pokemon with it today, so why not 2? Virgil chuckles that this is big talk, before asking if his young friend can really back it up, calling for Hydro Pump and Fire Blast. Without hesitation, the Evolutions launch their most powerful attacks, and knowing that dodging will be pointless with Bouffalant, Ash tells it to use Head Charge to break through the Hydro Pump, while Froakie negates the Fire Blast with Water Pulse. With a slightly panicked Winnie, the young bull charges, slamming its afroed head into the torrent of water, and using this newfound burst of adrenaline, actually manages to split the stream as it bears down on Vaporeon, much to the water cat's surprise. Flareon for its part tries to help its comrade, but is stopped when Froakie's Water Pulse and its Fire Blast collide, creating a steam haze which blankets the field. This works in the Ninja Frog's favor, with it using stealthful tactics to appear behind the fire type and hurl a point-blank Water Pulse to the back of its head. However, this phases right through the Firefox, and as Froakie looks on in shock, Virgil asks if Ash thought he was the only one with tricks, revealing that what Froakie attacked was a double-team duplicate, with the real Flareon being right behind it. Unfortunately for Ash, this is not a bluff, as when Froakie whips around to check, it is met with a feeling of strong jaws clamping around its throat, and if not for the layer of Frobbles protecting it, this would have been very bad indeed. Meanwhile, Bouffalant finally manages to close the distance on Vaporeon, and it seems that at least one of the boys' plans will come to fruition, but alas, it is not to be, as at the very last second Vaporeon disengages the Hydro Pump, and leaps over the calf, avoiding all damage and launching a bubble beam right into its back. Being still quite young, this is enough to make Bouffalant stumble, and as the bull hits the ground, it cries out in pain and terror, growing overwhelmed again. In a soothing tone, Ash calls for Bouffalant to calm down, but it is already too late, as the agitated young bull begins to freak out, the true power behind its meek disposition coming into full view as it charges across the field, clearing away the steam and catching Flareon in the side with enough force to break its hold on Froakie and send it soaring into the trunk of the battle tree with a loud crash. Everyone is stunned by this, most of all Ash, who thought Bouffalant could only use Head Charge, but as Virgil looks over at his battered fire type, he explains that Bouffalant must have just learned Stomping Tantrum, and since it missed Vaporeon with its last attack, the move is powered up. Ash calls this amazing, praising his Afro Calf, and telling it to do that again. However, in something of an ironic turn of fate, this praise manages to calm Bouffalant down enough that it comes out of its frenzied state, and stares at Ash with confusion, giving Vaporeon and Flareon the chance they need to get back in the battle. As one, the pair of Evolutions launch Bubble Beam and Flamethrower respectively, and with Bouffalant temporarily out of commission, it falls to Froakie to deal with both, taking the hit from Bubble Beam and lobbing a handful of fire retardant Frobbles to douse the Flamethrower. Fortunately, this is able to counter the worst of the tag team attack, and as Ash watches the Frobbles harden under intense heat, an idea dawns on him. Looking back to Bouffalant and Froakie with a smile, the young son of Pallet then tells them it's time to show off a combo move of their own, as he orders Bouffalant to use Head Charge on Flareon. Virgil, however, doesn't seem overly worried, telling Flareon to jump over it just as Vaporeon did, only for Ash to countermand this by having Froakie toss its Frobbles at the Firefox's feet. Quick as a flash, the Bubble Frog Pokemon hurls a handful of the bubbly substance, and as it makes contact with Flareon's luscious coat, it hardens thanks to the Fire-type's intense body heat. This leaves Flareon trapped, just as Ash had hoped, and with nowhere to run, the Flame Pokemon is forced to take another of Bouffalant's powerful attacks, downing it and turning the battle into a 2v1. However, any celebration would be premature, as by focusing solely on Flareon, Ash has forgotten about Vaporeon, a costly mistake, as it appears behind the calf and fires off another Hydro Pump, this time aimed for the base of Bouffalant's neck. With a skittish cry, Bouffalant tries to get away, but at such close range its efforts are in vain, and as the force of a fire hose strikes its most vulnerable point, it is rendered unconscious, evening up the score. Thanking Bouffalant for its hard work, Ash recalls it before turning to Froakie and asking if it's ready to win this. Froakie ribbits its agreement, and with a smile, Virgil warns that it won't be so easy, since by pairing Vaporeon with Flareon, he couldn't make use of the water type's full potential. But now that Flareon is out of the fight, he can finally show off Vaporeon's secret power. He then calls for a rain dance, and as Vaporeon swishes its tail back and forth, a storm cloud brews overhead, quickly breaking to blanket the field in rain. Ash, for his part, thinks he understands, knowing this will power up Vaporeon's water-type moves, though since it will do the same to Froakie, he has to wonder what Virgil stands to gain here. However, as he is soon to learn, the water-type boost is only a fraction of what the other boy has in store. When the field and area around it are sufficiently waterlogged, Virgil shows off the second part of his plan, calling for acid armor, and watching as the Bubble Jet Pokemon's body becomes water and blends in with a copious amount already created by Rain Dance. Once more, Ash thinks he understands Virgil's strategy, figuring that this is some sort of defensive camouflage, but with a smile, Virgil answers that this is only part of the plan, as suddenly Vaporeon reappears above Froakie, having become part of the rain itself. With a swipe of its paw, Vaporeon strikes the Bubble Frog's face, but before Froakie can launch a counterattack, the evolution is already gone, having become one with the water once again. Grinning broadly, Virgil comments that part of being a rescue ranger is understanding how to be one with nature, and no one knows that better than his Vaporeon, who thanks to its Rain Dance Acid Armor combo, can be anywhere on the field in an instant, and then can retreat just as effectively, granting it a perfect offense and defense. To prove this point, Virgil has Vaporeon strike again, and just like last time, it is able to get a hit off before dissolving into something Froakie cannot fight. Even running cannot help, as no matter where Froakie goes, Vaporeon can appear, slamming into it with a paw or a tail, then vanishing. Against such an onslaught, it is not long before Froakie nears the end of its tether, and as another surprise attack from Vaporeon hits it from above, Ash wishes there was some way to clear away this water, since he knows that in a straight fight, Froakie would win with ease. Then it hits him, there is a way to get rid of all the water. Calling out to Froakie, Ash tells it to stop focusing on Vaporeon and instead try to destroy the rain cloud. With a nod, Froakie jumps up onto the trunk of the battle tree and using its ninja skill runs vertically before leaping off and using its leg to slice through the rain cloud. However, such attacks are too weak to do more than leave little holes which quickly fill, rendering the attempt pointless. As Froakie falls, Vaporeon appears in midair to kick it in the back, and as it slams face first into the trunk, it uses this as momentum to start climbing once again. Once more at the apex of its run, Froakie dives into the rain cloud, using both arms now to strike in the hope of dispersing it. But just as with the first attempt, the Ninja Frog is unsuccessful, and just as with the first attempt, Vaporeon is waiting for on the way down, this time to slap Froakie into the field. For a moment, Ash thinks this might be it for the Bubble Frog, but showing its grit, Froakie rises to its feet, though it is clear that it cannot withstand even one more attack. Eyes meeting, trainer and Pokemon both know what they must do, and with a cry that he believes in it, Ash tells Froakie to make one last attempt at destroying the rain cloud. Feeling the force of Ash's faith strengthening it, Froakie charges up the tree. But Vaporeon has no intention of allowing this, appearing behind the water starter and preparing to blast it in the back. Ash doesn't even have time to cry out and warn Froakie, but inexplicably, the frog is able to dodge, almost as if it saw through Ash's eyes for a moment, and in this instant of synchronicity, Froakie's entire body begins to glow. As a result, it is a Frogadier who bursts through the cloud now, and by spinning like a shuriken, it is able to put all four of its newly extended limbs to work, breaking apart the haze and allowing blue skies to shine through. Down below, the rain stops, and as the last of the water runs off the side of the battle tree, Vaporeon is forced to retake its corporeal form. Ash and Virgil both know what this means, though the Unovan boy is not ready to give up so soon, and so as Ash tells Frogadier to use Pound one last time, Virgil puts all his hope into a Bubble Beam. Unfortunately for the Rescue Ranger, not only has Frogadier gained strength from its evolution, but also speed, which allows it to bat the bubbles aside as it comes in for a hard landing on Vaporeon's head. No one has to ask what the outcome of this will be, but all the same, when the dust clears, Hulla declares Vaporeon is unable to battle, meaning Ash will now face Paul in the top 8. In the center of the field, Frogadier collapses to its knees, clearly spent from that battle, and as Ash runs over to sling one of its arms around his shoulder, he tells it that it did an amazing job. Virgil seconds that thought, coming over to shake Ash's hand. Smiling, Ash thanks Virgil for one of the toughest battles of his life, and the Rescue Ranger calls it his pleasure, telling the young Cantonian to do his best in the next round. Ash promises that he will, then at Hulla's instruction heads further up the battle tree to meet Paul. It is quite a hike to reach the final battlefield of Green Bracket, with it being positioned at the very top of the tree. Here under the leafy canopy, the four paths converge, each with a battlefield painted on them, while at the center stands a large battlefield, which will no doubt be where the finals take place. Looking around, Ash is pleased to see that Gary and AJ have also made it to the final match of their brackets, with AJ facing Benga as promised, while Gary also gets to battle his rival in Astrid. As for Yellow Bracket, it is Alan versus Iris, and having plenty of respect for both trainers, he isn't sure who to root for. Finally, there is Paul, and as Ash takes his place across from him, the purple-haired boy huffs that he didn't think he'd make it this far. Ash retorts that he's full of surprises, though their barb trading is cut short as the four kahunas all assemble on the grand battlefield to call for the start of the matches. Figuring that battling will speak louder than words, Ash prepares to choose his first Pokemon. However, here he pauses. Pikachu, Frogadier, and Bouffalant are all exhausted from their battles, so while he could use them, would that be putting himself at a disadvantage? Ash doesn't know, though he's pretty sure the tournament was designed to make him question these very things so that he can improve as a trainer. Meanwhile, Paul has no such hesitancy, telling his Turtwig to stand by for battle, then tossing its ball into the ring. Recognizing this is the Pokemon who knocked Joe out of the tournament, Ash refuses to take it lightly, bringing out his Chimchar. Chimchar is delighted to be battling alongside Ash, letting out a number of excited hollers and shrieks, though this all comes to an abrupt halt when Paul shockingly withdraws his starter and replaces it with the leader of the Zangoose pack that attacked Chimchar during their first meeting. Terror fills the chimp Pokemon's eyes now, and as Paul tells his cat ferret to use Crush Claw, Chimchar is rooted to the spot by fear. This results in a nasty slash to Chimchar's chest, and as the little monkey falls backwards, Ash urges it to get up and fight. Unfortunately, Chimchar's phobia is too all-encompassing, and when Paul is able to get another free hit in on the petrified primate, Ash makes the call to return it, swapping in Trico. Snapping a twig off the battle tree to put in its mouth, Trico glares at Zangoose, and as the ferocious normal type responds in kind, it becomes clear that this will be a battle of prideful Pokemon. Ash and Paul then both give their orders to begin, with Ash calling for a pound while Paul commands Zangoose to use Crush Claw again. Physically speaking, Zangoose is bigger and stronger, and it seems as though this would be enough to clinch the battle in its favour, but Trico is not without its own advantages, being nimble, while also having far more experience fighting in a tree. And with Ash as its partner, Trico puts each of these advantages to good use, ducking and weaving with Quick Attack, and finding opportune moments to strike with its tail. Meanwhile, the bulky Zangoose cannot get a single hit in, and seeing this, Paul decides to recall it, returning Turtwig to the field. Wanting to see how his own grass starter measures up to Paul's, Ash decides to stick with Trico, and so tells it to use Pound, but as the Gecko Pokemon's tail comes down on Turtwig, the grass turtle thrusts its shell upwards, using it as a shield to block the attack. The pair of grass types then break apart, and as Trico touches down, Ash has it try again, though this time with Quick Attack. Unfortunately, the results here are the same, with Turtwig's shell shielding it from the majority of the damage. This quickly becomes the way of things, with Trico continually attacking, while Paul just has Turtwig defend. To Ash it seems like Paul is stalling, but for the life of him, he cannot figure out what for. That is until Trico is forced to take a break from attacking to catch its breath. In this moment, Ash sees just how fatigued the gecko is from having constantly been on the attack, and the same fact is not lost on Paul, who orders his starter not to let Trico recover. At once, spectral green energy bursts from the leaf on top of Turtwig's head, coating Trico and causing it to howl in pain as its vitality is further drained. Gritting his teeth, Ash pleads for Trico to stay strong, and in spite of its fatigue, the little lizard obeys, shaking off the absorb and throwing itself at Turtwig once more. Any injuries Turtwig may have suffered have now been healed, and so with a refreshed look in its eye, it levels its shield shell, ready to repeat the move that will invariably lead to its victory. However, such confidence has made the turtle arrogant, getting into defense position early, and so with a glint in his eyes, Ash tells Trico to use Quick Attack to leap over Turtwig and strike it from behind instead. Clenching its jaw, Trico deftly executes this command, landing behind Turtwig and swinging its tail in a wide arc to sweep the other grass type's feet, flipping it onto its back. Suddenly, Turtwig's perfect defense has become its greatest liability, and as it attempts to get back to its feet, Trico slams its tail into the turtle's belly as payback for earlier. This badly wins Turtwig, and seeing no honor in battering a helpless foe, Trico hooks its tail into the turtle's shell, flipping it right way up again so they can continue this fight fairly. When Turtwig is back on its feet, Trico resumes its offensive, though this time Paul responds in kind, telling his starter to charge in with Tackle. In the center of the field, the two grass types clash, neither willing to give an inch, and considering how exhausted both Pokemon are, the winner is anyone's guess. What follows is a slugfest, hitherto unseen by many gathered at the battle tree, as both Pokemon use anything at their disposal to get a hit in. Limbs, tails, shoulders, it doesn't matter so long as it does some damage. Eventually the grass types draw on their final resources, their heads, and as both drive their skulls into the others, a mighty crack rings through the battlefield. Even some of the other bracket finalists turn to see what has caused this noise, and all watch on as at last the battering ends, with both Trico and Turtwig staggering back, then collapsing in joint unconsciousness. Ash thanks Trico for its efforts, while Paul says nothing, simply bringing out his last Pokemon, Ninjask. Knowing that fire will do well against the bug, Ash reaches for Chimchar's ball, but is stopped when Pikachu leaps forward, clearly wanting a piece of the action. Whether this is because he was inspired by Trico, or just because he saw Ninjask's speed in the battle with Sawyer and now wants to test himself, Ash doesn't know, but respecting his best friend's wishes, he nods, telling the electric type that it's all up to him. At once, Pikachu opens with a Thunderbolt, and it takes Paul calling for agility in order to avoid the super effective move. However, this isn't all Paul has planned, as unlike with Turtwig, defense is not the aim of the game, and without hesitation, he tells the ninja Pokemon to use Fury Cutter. Quick as a flash, Ninjask is in front of Pikachu, having seemingly gotten faster even in the few seconds since the battle began. Thinking fast, Ash has Pikachu bring up his tail as a shield, clearly inspired by Paul's previous play, but unfortunately, a soft tail is not quite the same as a thick shell, and so Pikachu takes the full brunt of the attack, as well as a follow-up for twice the damage. Here the damage from their battle with Pawmot starts to show. As though Pikachu got a break during the match against Virgil, he is still not back to full health, meaning these otherwise trifling hits have already put the electric rodent on the back foot. Knowing that this could be bad, Ash tells Pikachu to try Thunderbolt again, but this time he is sure of it. Ninjask has gotten faster, as even without agility it dodges the lightning strike, before coming in for a third hit. This at least gives Ash a chance, as he knows where Ninjask will be, and so waiting for the last second, he calls for a point-blank Thunderbolt, just as Ninjask closes in. This does massive damage, and for a moment, Ash thinks he zapped the bug right out of the battle, but this hope is shattered when Paul barks at his Pokemon to take the hit and keep going. At once, any hint of pain or a desire to retreat vanishes, and with the stoic determination of a soldier following its commander's orders, Ninjask finishes the attack, closing in and slashing across Pikachu's chest with its third consecutive Fury Cutter. Having made use of that move plenty of times with Sand Slash, as well as seen how effective this strategy was against Sawyer, Ash is well aware of how devastating compound hits from it can be, and so it comes as no surprise that when Pikachu is thrown back, his eyes are spirals. Jogging onto the field, Ash picks up his pal, thanking him for setting up their victory, before bringing back out Chimchar. As the chimp Pokemon retakes the field, Paul tells Ninjask to finish this with its thrice-empowered Fury Cutter. But thankfully, Ash is ready, waiting once more until the bug is close so it cannot use its enhanced speed to escape, then calling for a Flame Wheel which strikes true. After the damage Pikachu's Thunderbolt did, this second super effective attack is too much for Ninjask, and it is sent flying, before landing at Paul's feet in a barbecued and most importantly unconscious heap. Scowling that Ninjask is pathetic, Paul swaps it with Zangoose, who emerges from its ball with a growl, ready to get some payback after the humiliation Trico gave it. However, what it finds is that same petrified Chimchar from before, and when it sees that the little wimp isn't gonna fight back, it grins maliciously. Paul sees this too, and so capitalizes by having Zangoose charge up a Focus Punch. Due to Chimchar's terror, this goes unopposed, with the cat ferret taking its sweet time to wind up the punch for maximum damage, and when it hits, Chimchar is sent rocketing into the battlefield with a scream of pain. Urgently, Ash tells it to get up, but at this point nothing can get through to the fire monkey, and so with its evil grin only growing, Zangoose kneels down on Chimchar's torso, readying another Focus Punch. This hits, as does the next, and the next. By now Chimchar's face is nothing but a mass of bruises as a result of Zangoose's brutal assault, and as the cat ferret swings what will surely be its final Focus Punch, it and its trainer feel assured of their victory. That is until the shriek pierces the air. That mad, blood-curdling shriek that Ash has come to know all too well, as with a rush of flames, Zangoose is blown off Chimchar, who rises to its feet, its tail flamed now several times its normal size, and its eyes a murderous pink. Or in his tone, Paul breathes that this is Blaze, but such an explanation is wholly unnecessary, as with another cry, Chimchar demonstrates the full force of its ability by venting all its rage on Zangoose. Where once it seemed that Chimchar had no hope of victory, now it is Zangoose's turn to know terror, as without pause or remorse, the fire monkey bears down upon it, scratching, biting, and burning every square inch it can get at, its only goal to cause pain. From his end, Ash pleads with Chimchar to stop, saying he knows this isn't the real it. It is a kind and sweet Pokemon, and would never want to seriously injure anyone. But just as last time, this falls on deaf ears. Hapu, as the referee of this match, snaps at Ash to get his Pokemon under control, or she'll be forced to disqualify both it and him. Looking around frantically, Ash is at a loss for what to do that might calm Chimchar's rage. Then, as his eyes fall on something, he smiles. Confidence back in his voice, Ash yells for Chimchar's attention, and drawn to what it construes as the aggressive roar of another enemy, the simian looks up. What it sees is Ash, brandishing his forearm, which still bears the deep bite marks Chimchar inflicted on him during the battle with Gary. However, despite this wound, Ash smiles, telling Chimchar that this is a symbol of their bond, and imploring it to remember their promise to master this power together, and that no matter what, he will always be on its side. This at last seems to resonate with Chimchar, and though its tail flame still burns large, and its eyes are still pinpricks in a sea of pink, something in its expression seems to soften, becoming more like itself. This is not lost on Ash, who cheers that he knew Chimchar was still in there, and as the monkey chitters happily in return, the son of Pallet asks if it's ready to finish this. With a cry that clearly means yes, Chimchar turns back to Zangoose, and with a swell of pride, Ash sees that though his friend has retained its mind, in this state, it seems that all fear has been burned away, meaning that at last, it can truly begin the battle. Unfortunately for Paul, the same cannot be said of Zangoose, whose terror and injury have driven it to its breaking point, and as Chimchar launches one last blaze-powered flame wheel, the cat ferret simply cannot take any more, and keels over, unconscious. And just like that, Ash has made it to the semi-finals. With a cheer, he runs over, pulling Chimchar into a hug, and as the flame simian's eyes finally return to normal, it softly licks the wound on Ash's arm, meekly apologizing for hurting its trainer. Ash, however, holds no grudge, and so simply hugs the fire type tighter, thanking it for its work before calling out his thanks to Paul as well. Huffily, Paul asks what for, and beaming brightly, Ash replies that he and his Pokemon helped him and Chimchar take the first step to mastering this blaze power, so for that he's grateful. Paul doesn't dignify this with a response, instead turning to watch the last of the bracket finals that is still ongoing, that being AJ versus Benga. By the looks of things, AJ is down to Charmander as his last Pokemon, while Benga has just lost his second, the Dragonair who he used as transport back at the ranch. Seeing this, Ash cheers for AJ and Charmander, with Pikachu and Chimchar doing likewise, and this makes the green-haired boy grin as he tells his fellow apprentice to wait for him in the finals. Ash promises to see him there, then both turn back as Benga unveils his final Pokemon. The Pokemon Benga brings forth is unlike any Ash has ever seen before, resembling some great fiery moth. However, AJ is well aware of what this creature is, and in a voice of purest reverence, he gasps that this is Gramps' ace Pokemon. Grinning maniacally, Benga nods that it sure is, and with it, he's gonna put Ali in his place. He then calls for a fiery dance, and as the great moth's wings begin to glow, AJ tells Charmander to run, since Volcarona is too powerful, but Charmander, wanting to get the win for AJ, instead stands and fights, putting the last of its strength into a flamethrower, which it belches at the firebug. Briefly, this bathes Volcarona, and AJ allows himself to hope that maybe his little friend has the strength to take down this fabled beast. But alas, it is not to be, as when the Sun Pokemon's wings fully ignite, their light is blinding, and when AJ's vision returns, he finds Charmander badly burned and unable to battle at his feet. Nanu calls the match in Benga's favor, ending AJ's battle tree journey here, and as Charmander looks up at its trainer, terror fills its eyes. It knows what it just cost AJ, and after its experience with Damien, it knows what'll happen next. However, instead of showing anger, AJ smiles, pulling the little fire type into a hug and thanking it for doing its best, as he tells it how proud he is of it and the lengths it went to for him. So this is unconditional love. After Damien, Charmander had given up on such things. But now at last, the little lizard knows that it's real, and as hot tears roll down its cheeks, a warmth begins to emanate from its core. Watching on, Ash sees light begin to engulf Charmander as it evolves into Charmeleon, much to the delight of its trainer, who beams and congratulates the fire type. However, their celebration is cut short by a jeering Benga, who taunts that he won, and now Ali knows what it's like to be second best. Looking up at his cousin, AJ speaks, though it is not in the spiteful tone with which they have always addressed each other, and the words that come out of his mouth shock everyone, most of all Benga. I'm sorry. AJ continues that he's sorry he made Benga feel that way for so long, admitting that before he met Ash and Master Red, he was an arrogant jerk, but now he hopes that his cousin can see that he's changed, and maybe after this battle, they can start to put the past behind them and try to be friends. The green-haired youth then offers a hand to shake, but instead of kinship, AJ is met with disgust, as Benga slaps it away, scowling that this isn't how this was supposed to go at all. Ali was meant to be distraught. He took away his shot at winning the tournament, so why isn't he crying like the loser he is? Self-assurance in his voice, AJ replies that he's not a loser. He has great friends and Pokemon who would do anything for him, and who know he would do the same for them. And in the face of that, losing a battle just isn't that important anymore. He then rises to his feet, leading Charmeleon over to Red, while behind him, Benga howls that somehow that jerk managed to even take the sweetness of victory from him. With the last of the bracket matches concluded, the Kahunas then call for the semi-finalists to join them on the main battlefield. And as Ash makes his way over along with the others, his and Red's eyes meet, with the champ giving his protege a proud smile that says more than any words could. When the four of them are in place, Olivia congratulates each of them for earning their place in the semi-finals, saying they have all proved themselves to be exceptional battlers, though from here on out, the battles they face will be unlike any they have ever participated in. She then addresses the spectators, mentors and former competitors alike, urging them to give a round of applause for these fine young challengers. And as thunderous applause fill the battle tree, she announces the names of the final four: Ash, Benga, Gary, and Alan. And that's where we'll leave things. What challenges await our heroes in the semi-finals? Can Ash hold his own against his three strongest rivals? And who will walk away champion of the Battle Tree tournament? Find out as the journey continues.